Welcome, commuters, to another episode of MC Commute. Got something to say? Tough crowd. Welcome, viewers, to another episode of MC Commute. My name is Zach, and I'm gonna ride to the office. Today's guest is one that I'm kind of excited about. Actually, it's Kawasaki's Z650. ABS, mind you. We'll talk about that later. The reason I'm excited about this bike is that I love the Kawasaki Versys 650. I do not love the Ninja 650. This bike shares a lot of bones, kind of the same chassis. So what do we think? Is it going to be more Versys or is it going to be more Ninja? I guess we're going to have to find out. And it is a brand new day here in 2018, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So let's kick it into gear, shall we? Yeah. All right, so Z650, got it in this camo green. You don't have to get it in if you don't want to. I think it looks pretty cool, although it's a little hard to tell the features, depending on whether or not you think it's a good looking bike. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess. What do we got here? We got these like pedal rotors that Kawasaki always does. Been doing that for a while. Nissan calipers, we will talk about those. This is the sort of tubular frame that the new Ninja 650 got, and then this bike gets as well, which Kawasaki says makes it quite a bit lighter. Also makes it look maybe a little bit more like an H2, because H2 has that trellis steel thingamabob. Your underslung exhaust, as is typical with all these bikes over the past few years. Kind of a cool looking swing arm, right? Someone on Instagram pointed that out. They asked if it makes any difference compared to the SV650 swing arm, for example, which looks like a piece of lawn furniture. And, I think the answer is no. I don't think it makes a difference. Except that it looks great, which, that helps, right? So, yeah, okay. Let's do the damn thing. Shall we know? Oh, come on, guy. There we go. Yep. Okay. Let's do it. So by the specs on paper, it is a 649cc parallel twin. It is a parallel twin like the Z07, MT07, but it's a different firing order. So the Yamaha has the 270 crank, which makes it go thump, thump, thump. This has a more standard firing order, and it doesn't go thump, thump, thump. It goes zzz, which I find significantly less attractive. It's personal opinion, though. So it is a good little engine, different than the Yamaha's because of the firing order, but it's the same basic two pistons going up and down next to each other kind of formation. It weighs 412 pounds with a full 4 gallons of gas. That's a little bit heavier than the Yamaha, for example, by about 10 pounds, but it also holds 0.3 of a gallon more fuel. So that's something to keep in mind. It holds more gas than the SV650 or the MT07, which hold 3.8 and 3.7 gallons respectively. So you get a little bit extra fuel with the Z650, which is kind of a nice feature, you might say. Other specifications, it dynoed just about 60 horsepower, and that is a little bit less than the competition there. I think the SV makes around 70 and the MT07 makes around 66. The SV doesn't make quite as much torque as the Z650 does. The Yamaha is cheating a little bit because it's 689 instead of a 650, so keep that in mind too. That's just about all the specs I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe some other stuff will come to me while we're discussing. This is usually the time when I talk about ergonomics, and right off the bat, remember I was talking about the comparison between the Versys and the Ninja 650s, and this thing kind of being in the middle. Well, it definitely feels like it's in the middle because The seating position, the seat and the pegs, very Ninja 650. Very odd arrangement. Then again, I'm 6'2", and I am spoiled by fairly long legs. So if you're short of stature, then you'll appreciate that this bike has a really low seat. It's actually, it'll be a probably kind of a selling point. Me, I'd put a taller seat on it because my legs are a little bit cramped up. So if you're tall, keep that in mind. On the Versus front, it's very upright. Not quite as upright as the Versus, but it's very upright. I mean, it's a little bit sporty, I guess, but I mean, you could almost sit straight up and down. It's not very aggressive at all, which is good news because it's comfy. So all in all, the ergos, I would say, are not bad. They're just not good. And I mean that objectively. Subjectively, I don't like them. I would need a taller seat. But yeah, all things considered, the seat's pretty comfortable. There isn't a crazy amount of vibration yet anyway. We'll talk about that later. It also feels narrow right at the junction here. Doesn't not quite as narrow maybe as an SV, which of course, you know, the V-twin's in line, right? So it's easier to make it narrow, whereas the two cylinders are sitting next to each other in this case, so maybe not as easy. But the standover height is very agreeable. It's even sort of visually narrow. It's got this sort of like spine of a tank that, like, I don't know, it's like, yeah, it's pretty narrow. You may have noticed I missed a shift there too when I was shifting without the clutch. Despite that, I think that I like this transmission better than any transmission in the class. It's the first thing that I noticed when I started riding this bike around, and it gets me pretty much every day recently. I click through the gears and I think, man, it's just really positive, and hey-oh, it's really positive and easy to use, and the clutch has good feel. It's just really nicely built. You gonna cut me off? Is that what you're doing? You're freaking me out, man. Please don't do it. This is the Z650's happy place, in my personal opinion. Like 50, 60 miles an hour, 4,000 RPM-ish in top gear. It's pretty smooth, like a little buzzy maybe, but not too bad. But it's just very, very comfortable. Wind blast and everything. Ooh, never catch this green light. That's exciting. Carving through a little curve here. Z650 turns in pretty well. It's not, I don't think it handles quite as well as the competition there from Yamaha and Suzuki, frankly. But it does benefit from a 160 section rear tire. That's like the SV has, whereas the MT-07 has a 180. It's a little bit fatter. Subtleties like tire width are tricky to judge because it depends on which brand of tire you have on there, which model. The point is, from my perspective, I feel like it has the right amount of tire. I think it's cool, I guess, that the MT-07 has a 180 tire on it, but it's not really necessary. Rat race, rat race. Vroom vroom. Little power wheelie in first gear. It's pretty good. Man, we hit all those green lights. I didn't talk about the dash or the brakes or anything. Gonna have to do that. Don't let me forget. Don't let me forget. Now this little surge in mid-range right here, like roll, well, I'm not gonna do it right now because that truck scares me. But if I change lanes and I roll it open in fifth gear, it surges forward pretty hard. It really does. And it makes great power in the mid-range. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that it doesn't make as much peak power as the Yamaha or the Suzuki, for example. Kawasaki put smaller throttle bodies on this bike compared to the previous generation Ninja 650, and I think the reason they did that was to reach for a little bit of mid-range there and not concentrate so much on peak power, which I think was wise. because it has really, really linear, nice, easy to use power. Do I wish that it sounded like a Yamaha or a Suzuki when it accelerated? Yeah, I do. Sorry, I do. But again, that's just me. Maybe you like that 180 crank business. Ah! I mean, that's like 75 miles an hour. Boom, just like that. I don't know, every time I ride a bike like this, an MT-07 or an SV650 or a Z650, anything in this basic category, I don't know, people clown on bikes this size. Like an SV650 is like, oh, it's not fast enough. It's plenty fast. Sure, horsepower is fun. I'll be the first to admit that, but I don't know, this thing's got a fun amount of power. Second gear wheelies, by the way, which hopefully we'll experiment with later. Someone on Instagram wanted to know how the bike feels on the freeway, and specifically vibrations and wind blast. The wind blast, you can probably guess, is fairly significant because there's no body work. But it's not bad. Again, it's a comfortable bike. The vibrations are, yeah, they're kind of noticeable. And I think this is where the real root of my general distaste for this style of parallel twin, the more sort of conventional firing order, I think this is where it comes from, because it's a little bit buzzy. It's a little bit, when you have an engine that is characterful and interesting and bassy and kind of pleasurable, then when it vibrates, you think like, oh, well, there's like, it might be a little bit too much, but at least it's too much of a good thing. Whereas this engine starts to vibrate around 5,000 RPM. In my opinion, it's not a great feel for any for any bike. I should say though, it's really not uncomfortable at all. It's not like a S1000 XR level of tingling where if you ride for a full fuel tank on the freeway, you'll get off and you'll wonder if you have to amputate your hands. It's not like that at all. Plenty comfy, frankly. And maybe I put too much emphasis on sound and feel of an engine, but I don't know. I just feel like it's important. Hey, what about mirrors, Zach? Great question from the floor. Mirrors are pretty good. Sort of standard Kawasaki mirrors, this angular shape. They work okay. Nothing to write home about. If you're like me and when you write home, you write about mirrors. Windshield washer. That's my motorcycling pet peeve. One of them anyway. When you're behind someone and they wash their windshield, man, that really bugs me. I know it's hard to ask these cagers to be aware enough of motorcycles not to wash your windshield when there's a motorcycle behind you, but man, that would be nice. If I never get a freaking Pfizer load of windshield washer again in my life, it'll be too soon. Traffic on the off-ramp. Can't really bend into this curve, but I can tell you that the Z650 handles twisty roads really well. It's a treat. I appreciate that the suspension is really balanced front to rear. Feels like you know, I don't know, it feels like they thought about that. And that's a worthy thing to think about, because it's important that the bike is balanced. It's a little soft for me and my weight, which is probably around 200 pounds with gear on, but yeah, other than that, suspension's pretty good. Not really adjustable though, just preloading the shock. So the dash is very clear. Gear position indicator in the middle, speed, and then trip meter, clock at the bottom. This little sort of quasi analog tack situation, which works pretty well, I should say. But it's not, like, stylistically, it's not my favorite. It's a little bit video gamey, but functionally it's great, to be honest. Okay, red light. We're gonna talk about brakes. I like the brakes on this bike. Actually, I think I like them better than any other bikes in the class. I think they're good. They're strong, nice big Nissan calipers and big rotors and 2 of them, and good job Kawasaki, my opinion. Well, there's one little thing you can do with the dash. If you hold down these 2 buttons, you can change it. See how the you can do that, or you can have the dash do that, or you can have it do this where it tracks itself. I don't know, I like this one, so I'll leave it on that one. Anywho, I guess it's time to talk about price and where the bike sits among the competition. I've been talking a lot about Yamaha's MT-07 and Suzuki's SV650, and obviously there's a reason for that. I mean, this bike and those bikes are directly aimed at one another. So the Z650 is $7,000 with no ABS. I believe it's $7,400 with ABS, and that's competitive, right? I mean, you tell me, but I think it's competitive. Yeah, I think that's a fair price. I think it's a good bike for that money. Can you back it in? Sort of, yeah. And here's that second gear wheelie that I was promising. Great wheelie bike, hey-o! Damn good wheelie bike. And yes, you can back it in, but you gotta do it all with slipping the clutch. It does it really nicely, actually. I wish I could shut off ABS, but I don't think you can, as far as I know. So, would I buy a Z650? No, I wouldn't. I'd buy a Versa 650. I was going to buy any bike in this category, sorry, from Kawasaki, about this size, because the Versa 650 is brilliant for so many reasons that have been listed on this show before. And if I was going to buy a little naked bike in this category, I would probably buy an FZ07 because I like the torque and I like the sound, and that's what I have to say about that. Yeah, this is a nice bike. It's really nice. It's well built. I think it looks pretty cool. It's got good brakes. It's got a great transmission. It's nice. It's a really nice bike. There's nothing wrong with it, really. It's got that nice low seat height that we talked about. It's just this category is too strong. My personal opinion would be one of the other two, probably for that little bit of power and that little bit of sound, and that's it. I'd suffer through worse brakes. Right? It's just not quite as inspiring. But all in all, a good bike. And I should say, for the sake of the name of the show, it is a terrific commuting machine. Especially if you like the way that it looks. You like the color, you like the seat height, you like the whatever. Get one. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that MC Commute. As usual, I hope that you will subscribe to our channel. Follow me on Instagram at Zack Courts if you want to ask me questions about this bike. Sometimes I give pre-questions before I do the MC Commute, and you can prime the pump for me. I'd appreciate that. Otherwise, check out our other content. I'll see you next time on MC Commute, and you guys ride safe. Aight, see ya.